project management, and I said they impact everything, and I am not kidding, it impacts everything. But data is the key here. And the reason for that is because how many of you guys have had, you know operationally that there's stuff going on and you have these gut feelings about what's going on, and then you go and try to change behavior, and it's an uphill battle, and it's almost impossible in some cases. And without data and just going off that gut, you're playing whack-a-mole. Again, you play this game of whack-a-mole, and you don't know if you should keep doing it because you don't know if it's actually fixing it or not. And this stuff that we're trying to do is hard stuff. So if you don't have data that tells somebody, well, gosh, if we did that differently, you'd have, basically another $1 million in your pocket. Wouldn't that be really nice? Well, now we can start talking to people that way and addressing that. And what we're talking about is that we're talking about PMs having two different types of power. So there's sort of direct power that they have of managing projects, right? Managing throughput, so increasing utilizations by managing throughput, reducing your write-offs, so lowering that realization gap because they're doing better scoping and estimating and all of these things, right? So they have very direct power associated with that. But what I want to talk a little bit about is their indirect power. Being the data shepherds is their indirect power because they are now going to give you the insights that you need in order to better run the business. That is the indirect power that entire discipline has, okay? And that's what's so important. Now, what I love is that you can't get this information without an integrated technology. You absolutely cannot. It is impossible. But just having an integrated tool like Workology does not guarantee you this data. Because a lot of you have some pretty ugly data. Okay? However, if you build that PM discipline up, if you make sure that they're the stewards, because they need to be looking at this stuff to manage their jobs anyway, guys. I mean, yes, I can get it out the door, but I'm saying PM is more than getting it out the door. It is now getting it out the door on budget, right? And it needs to be the right thing, and we can't do it 12 different ways. We need to do it the right way, okay? So that's really what we're looking at, okay? So what's great, you're all in Workology. You can get this. You just have to figure out how to get your data to the place where you can get this. So let's just talk a little bit about an agency. Just to give you an example. We're going to talk about this agency. So this agency is about almost $11 million in revenue, but they're only about $5.3 million in AGI, lots of production, lots of media. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this concept of finance. Remember, we're talking about financial opportunity cost, right? That's what you should be trying to get back. So they actually have this financial opportunity cost of about $1.9 million. So think about this, $5.3 million in fee in basically AGI. So, right, take all of the expenses out, they're $5.3 million in AGI, and they could make another $2 million. It's a really big gap. That's a really big gap, okay? They basically could be a $12.6 million company. And what you're pointing out here is the power of financial opportunity cost is there's no extra expenses to get this back, right? You already paid for everything. So literally, that entire $1.9 million falls directly to the bottom line, falls directly to your net profit. So instead of having, this has 0% profit, but negative. But the point being, instead of that, you could have, it's somewhere like, if you increase your revenue by 15%, you could have 14 times your net profit by just doing this. Because people don't recognize that how important it is to measure your financial opportunity cost and to address that and break that opportunity cost down into the buckets so that you can operationally solve those things in different ways. So let's talk a little bit about realization. So we could talk about how PM affects everything, and I just don't have enough time to talk about everything, but I want to talk about realization, because realization is probably where it's the easiest place to start, honestly. And remember, I talked, you want to fix your realization gap before you fix your utilization, or you're just going to increase the throughput of work you're not getting paid for. So let's talk a little bit about realization. So same agency, and we're gonna focus on this, but we're gonna say, here is our realization opportunity cost. Here's just the part that is made up of for my realization. And again, these are your billable hours not being billed to clients, okay? And there's often a lot of them. And in this case, it's 3.5 bodies worth of time. That means I had to hire 3.5 more people. I could be 3.5 people less, or I'm killing my people, which happens a lot too, right? But I'm not getting paid for it. Not only am I hurting my culture, they're not even paying me for this work. And it could be because we're over-servicing. It could be because we misscoped the work. There's so many different things that it could be. But at the end of the day, that's a lot of people, of extra people that you have to have, okay? But at the end of the day, what I really want to know is, where are my biggest realization gaps? So this is nice. Again, big number. But I can tell you this, thanks to PM, we have these answers, okay? Without PM, we wouldn't have this. So let's talk about that. Well, now I'm looking at this, and I actually can see that my realization gap is made up of 2 big buckets, right? Unplanned and planned, okay? Planned would be, think of the pro bono client that you knew you were going to give the work away to. That's planned. But hopefully it's planned. But the point being is, that is a situation where you don't want to categorize planned and unplanned the same way. If you said you were going to do that, you built that into your financial model, we're going to give this much work away for free next year, and that actually, we can still be profitable and do that, right? Now, the other catch is when I've got 3 different principals giving away planned investments and they don't talk to each other, and the next thing you know, we've given away way more than we should. But that's now, if I measure it, now we can talk about it. And guess what? If I have a special approver on every line so I know which principal gave it, then I can go back and, I joke, tease, hold them accountable for what they invested in. Now, the unplanned stuff is where we really want to focus, because that's the stuff that's really hurting us. So here, that's a $900,000 realization gap, and it's about 200 planned and 700 unplanned-ish, okay? So let's talk about client. This client we have has $200,000 in write-offs, okay? And that seems really bad. That's like the worst client we have, right? It's the biggest bar up there. But it's actually only 6% of the work we did with them. So based on my trending, it's not so bad. It's not as bad. I mean, I don't like any write-offs, but it's going to happen. But 6% isn't so bad. Because my average over here, if you look at my 16 and my 5, let's see if I can make this work. Ha ha ha, look at this. There we go. Over here, if I look at here, my average is 21%. Okay? So 6 is not bad, right? Compared to 21. However, let's look at client, this is 1252. So 26,000 in write-offs. Okay, it doesn't feel as bad as the 200, right? But it's 77% of the work I did with them. I would recommend you just write them a check and you give it to them and you save all the trouble and pain that caused on your culture. Okay, it wasn't worth it. And if you were to increase work with this client, you would probably go out of business. But you got to know that. And if you don't know that, you can't make these good decisions. And that is why you'll tell me I value the PM team more than anything, because I need this information to make good decisions. So, but why did we write this much work off? Right? Thanks to PM, we can answer these questions. Okay? So let's break it down. Not a shocker, but $167,000 was in the creative department. Okay, that's not a surprise to anybody. But actually, it was only 13% of the total work the creative department did. Not so bad. It's big, but that's usually because the creative departments are big. However, PR, sorry to say, it was $83,000, which isn't so bad, except that it was half the work of the department. We're writing off half of the work of all of PR. Let's start with, that's not a viable business model. And we need to go talk to that PR director and say that. But guess what? How many people have tried to have that conversation with a department head and not been able to get anywhere because you can't explain it in this way? And you can't compare it and say, this doesn't work for the agency. This doesn't work for the organization. Okay? Now we can. But let's cut this, slice this a different way. What are the reasons? So, almost $400,000 to over-servicing and over-delivering. That's not good. The sad part about over-servicing and over-delivering is the definition of it is that it started from within the organization. Meaning it was our idea to over-service and over-deliver. It wasn't the client's idea. That's beyond scope. We did this to ourselves, which also means we have complete control over it. Okay? Or we can. However, next to that, almost $200,000 in misscoping. Right? Now I want to know and I need to be able to say, okay, what am I misscoping? Right? Am I misscoping digital? Am I misscoping PR, clearly? So these are the things that we need to be focused on. Okay? But we can actually get more detail. Thank you, PMs. We can get more detail. Okay? We can actually look in here and we could say, we can actually look at our project performance and say, here are projects with really low write-offs. Let's repeat these, right? Let's do these again. Here's our projects with really high write-offs. And it's so funny, when you roll over these and it usually says the project name and everyone in the room goes, oh my God, oh, that was that one. That was so awful. It was the worst experience ever. Because these projects up here, they have such an impact. They break everything as they go through your company. And honestly, they break people too. And so you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to this stuff. It's part of the reason why the turnover is so high in this industry. It's because projects like this break people. So we also know that strategic planning projects, that project type is our largest write-off. And second to that is video broadcast TV projects. That's not really a surprise. But these are the two projects types that we have the biggest write-offs on, so I know exactly what to fix. I know exactly where to go and what to fix at this stage. Can we get more detailed? We can. Thank you to our project managers. We can. So let's look at this really painful project. This is actually a video and broadcast TV project. And I had $56,000 in write-offs, and that's 61% of the total project. I literally wrote off 61% of the project. It's like, why? Why did I even do this project, right? It has nothing but negative effect on your company. So you got to know that. And guess what? I had to pay a half a body more to do the work I didn't get paid for. So, or I killed somebody to do it, one or the other. Okay? And I over-serviced in 3 different departments. And what's critical to know about this is that your over-servicing in creative requires write-offs in 2 other departments because it requires project management to write it off and account management to manage all of those things, right? So every time you over-service and over-deliver in one department, you have write-offs in 2 other departments, every time. Okay. So let's look at a good project though. Okay, let's look at something good. Okay, so not that any write-offs are great, but again, let's talk about it. Here's a really good video and broadcast project. Okay, I had $26,000 in write-offs. That's still a lot of money, but it's only 3% of my total project. I can take that. I can handle that. That probably ran pretty well. And what I learned about it, but because it was big, it's still 0.2, right? It's a quarter of a body. And we went beyond scope in 4 departments. What I know is the client asked for something out of scope. I didn't change order them, and I did the work anyway. Now I know that. So now I can start to classify where my problems are. Are my problems with my account people who keep promising things? Are my problems with my clients? Are my problems with my PMs who are misscoping something? Or are my problems with creative or PR that's consistently over-servicing and over-delivering? If I can start to nail those things down operationally, I can fix that. And this is where you've got to, the data is what you need. We want to do more of these projects, less of the other ones. So really quickly, because I know I'm running a little bit over, I blame that all on Ron. I'm just kidding. So think about one of the things we talked about, back to our measuring our financial potential, right? So at the end of the day, this is our utilization opportunity cost. So we talked about project managers also affect throughput, right? They absolutely affect the throughput of the organization, of the work going through. And the more we can increase that throughput, right, the more we can keep people billable. Think about resourcing in Workamajig. One of the best things about allocating resources in Workamajig is that everybody walks in and they know what to work on. There's not 10,000 meetings trying to figure out who's doing what and what you're working on. You can have an extremely quick stand-up every morning and validate that everybody's working on everything, load balance, and that's what's going to increase the throughput. But what project managers have to do in order for that to work, right? There's a lot of work behind that resourcing. We'll learn all about that today. Okay, so I've got 5 bodies worth of work that is not getting done, basically, because that utilization gap is there. So not only do I have 3.5 people over here, I now have 5 extra people over here. That's 8.5 extra bodies in this organization. That's a lot. But let's talk about the biggest utilization gaps, okay? So what we can see is I've got my production, planning, and video departments are significantly underutilized. This is just to the target that we set for them, and most of the time we don't even set video targets that high. It doesn't happen. So at the end of the day, I also spent $1.8 million of my billable resources time trying to land new business or growing existing accounts, okay? That means that the strategy or all their scoping time and all of that they're doing, that's time that they're not spending being billable, which is okay to a point, but you better be getting something out of that. If you're using all that time and you're pitching and you're not winning, well, then it probably isn't worth the $1.8 million. And also, that's $900,000 of opportunity cost on your internal initiatives. Okay, well, if they're paying off for you, okay, but what if they're not? Again, you need to really think about that. And that's driving down your ability to produce billable work. Okay? So when we think about financial potential, right? We need to focus on transitioning non-billable time to billable time. So we want to utilize PM to increase throughput and increase utilization. And this is, if you can establish PM rigor around your non-billable biz dev projects and around your internal initiatives, right? Just because they're non-billable doesn't mean they don't need to be project managed. That's one of the problems. They get out of control if they're not project managed, and then you wake up and the next thing you know you have $1.8 million in there. So we need to be really looking at that. We need to be focusing on all of those different pieces. And again, as I say, thanks to PM and an integrated tool like Workamajig, we get that information. We can now change behavior. We can make people do something different, and we can make our organization a better place.